Morning, everybody. Welcome to today's session on cloud computing. Thank you for joining, and let's start the session with a brief meditation. Let's sit back and relax. Our meditation theme today would be self-mastery, believing in our highest potential that lies within. Let's observe a brief moment of silence. Where everything is settling down. All the fluctuations of the mind, let them settle down. And now from this stable state, which is a neutral state, let's spike, rise up to a higher state of belief. A belief that I am very strong and powerful. I am stronger than the situations surrounding me. Again, let every other thought settle down, and this only one thought prevail. I am who I believe I am. I am powerful. I am programmed with inner resilience, inner strength, inner powers. That's my innate programming. I am powerful. I don't have to be. I am. I don't have to convince myself. I am. I am powerful than any situation, any problem that surrounds me. I am powerful. I have the power, the innate natural strength to rise above every problem and situation. To detach from it and see the challenge that it is presenting, and with a very stable mind, face that challenge. Let every other thought settle down. No fluctuations. No riding on the bike of the mind. No wandering with the bike. I am in control. I decide where the bike goes. The bike can't take me wherever it wants to. Because I am powerful. Let's stay in this stage and observe a brief moment of silence. And resume today's session. Thank you.
Rocky. So we'll start with today's session. Before we get started, are there anyone in the audience who are new today to this session and attending it for the first time? If you can please say yes or put your name in the chat. That way we can make sure that we'll briefly summarize what we've covered very briefly in the previous session. Okay, thanks. Welcome, Ankush. Welcome, Yogesh. So I'll just briefly introduce, since we have two new members today. So we are a nonprofit organization. We are the IT wing of Rajyoga Education Research Foundation, and we've conducted a lot of sessions for corporates and other organizations uh, on stress management and other topics, explaining the inner working or the inner technology of the mind. And we are using the same principles to bring the principles of universal brotherhood, to bring not just peace and happiness in our lives, but also bring the same in our career. Because we realize that if we have a happy career, it automatically translates in a better, happy life as well. So the purpose of these first of the few series of sessions is to introduce the basics of cloud fundamentals that would help you open up avenues for you for better career opportunities as well. So this is our fifth session. All our sessions are free of cost. There's no charge at all. We strongly believe education is not a business, and we learn and grow by sharing more of it. So with that, today our speaker, Prashant, he's an AWS certified expert. He's working at Amazon. He's a technical manager as well. And he'll be sharing more about identity and access management as such, and tell us practically what it is and what we're doing with it. But before that, we have a session dedicated on career planning and career guidance. In our previous sessions, we talked about what is IT, what are the different technologies associated with IT, so that way we know what choices are there. And in addition to that, in our previous session, we also covered the different roles in IT. Strongly encourage you to go through the previous recordings. Those are available on our WhatsApp group. We strongly encourage you to be interactive and ask questions. You can post questions during the webinar in the chat as well. We continuously monitor and make sure you have all the answers. And in addition to that, if you have any more questions after the session is over, you can always post questions in the WhatsApp group. In We also want you to give us feedback, specifically negative feedback, and you can share what other things you are interested in learning as well, so we can cater our sessions to maximize the benefit to you. So your feedback helps us to fine tune our sessions to make sure we are providing maximum benefit to you. So starting with today's session, Raki, she's also part of IT Wing, uh, and she's conducted a session to make sure our mind is not wandering, we are focused, and that way we can absorb a lot more. uh, so I hope you are able to focus in this session as well. Starting with career management, today we'll be talking about introduction to project management. And what we want to do is discuss what is project management, what kind of skill set is needed for project management, and what are the options. Uh, in IT projects, we last time we discussed there are different phases for the IT project, and there are different roles corresponding to it. To manage those different and coordinate those different roles, uh, we have to just one second. Are you all able to hear me okay? Okay. So in order to manage and coordinate uh, all the various resources in the project playing different roles, uh, there is a need to manage the project. But what we are really managing in the project is three things. That is the primary goal and responsibility of a project manager. One is the cost. Before a project begins and it begins its life cycle of the requirements, design, development, testing, deployment phase, there is a phase prior to it, which is usually the project initiation phase. During that phase, usually organizations would have what's called as a project management office. It's nothing but it's a department which is primarily responsible for execution of projects to make sure they are delivered on time, within budget, and they are delivered with quality. Those are the key objectives of project management. So project management office, they will assign a project manager.
To
And in
interrupt,
that
Mukesh,
project initiation phase,
by
it
any
goes
chance, are you
through
sharing
a
your screen?
round of elimination and determination. What should be the goal of the project? What should be the budget of the project? What are the key business objectives? Because remember, there's no requirement started yet. It's
Is the
project
screen being
initiation.
shared?
So
We are not
what
able to see the screen.
Okay. Let me share 1 second, then maybe we can share it. Just give me 1 second. Apologies for it. I think I'll need to be added to the panelist so I can share the screen. But nevertheless, we'll get started as well, and I'll send out the slides as part of it. So when in the project initiation phase, there is a criteria that this project should meet certain business objectives, and there's something called as a CBA, a cost benefit analysis, where the business will define what the objectives are for the project. Why are we doing this project, and why is it important? Remember, the purpose of IT is to support, enable business to improve cost efficiency and being able to drive that innovation with agility to provide new business functionalities or features, such as targeting new customers or adding efficiencies in the business process by automation, adding new business partners, and so on. So there are always needs of new projects throughout the year, which IT delivers. So they do a cost benefit analysis to know what is the benefit of doing this project in terms of whether it's worth for business to do that project, because that would either increase revenue or it would help in saving cost, and the cost of the project would outweigh the benefits. And if it's going to take 200,000 to do the project, but it helps in a saving of 1 million over 3 years, then the project is paying for itself. So during that phase, that analysis goes in, and in that the PMO will identify or assign a project manager to it, will define the budget for it, and how long should that project take. And then the purpose of the sole responsibility of the project manager is to primarily make sure the project is delivered within the budget, which is specified in the project charter, which is another document which will say what it is that this project is going to do, how long it's going to take, what is the budget for it, and making sure it's delivered on time. So it's delivered within budget, it's delivered on time, and there's a quality component to a project. For example, if a project is not well tested, then the customer experience is not going to be pleasant. So yes, it might help bring in some new customers, but it might also help lose some customers as well. If the website is crashing all the time, it's not highly available, then also it's not going to be a pleasant experience as well. So whatever the parameters are defined, whatever the requirements are defined, making sure that those requirements are met as well. Those are well tested, and we are delivering a good quality product. They might need 100 requirements. We may not be able to deliver all 100, but we are able to deliver 90 of them. But if we
May
are
we
not
interrupt
delivering a
for a moment,
substantial
please?
quality, then it's important.
I
Yes?
believe we are in a mode to share the slides now. Can you please check your sharing permissions?
Okay, thank you.
You hear me? Raki, can you hear me?
Audio is very faint at the moment.
My apologies, I'm having some issues. We'll, as Prashant mentioned in the chat, we'll make sure we send out the slide deck so you'll have a copy of it. Uh, So the key point is that the project manager is responsible for delivering the project on time within the budget as well. In terms of the skill set, usually the project manager is not expected to know programming at all, but usually there's an expectation that project managers are technical. So if you're telling them, what is AWS, they won't be like, I've never heard about it, I have no idea. So usually there's always a need in the market for technical project managers who have ideas about, what are IT systems, what is DevOps, right? The deployment process, and they are well versed with the project methodology. Nowadays, there are two primary key project methodologies on how projects are executed, managed, and delivered. In computer science universities and everything, they all talk about waterfall method, which is sequential. You first gather all the requirements of the project. You gather based on all those requirements, the architect does the design. And then once the design is complete, then you do the development. And then once development is done, you do the deployment and so on. So it's sequential. Each phase follows one after the other. But most of the organizations have now shifted to agile project delivery, in which you don't have to collect all the 100, let's say 100 requirements for the project. You start with what's the bare most minimum important needed to have a functional product. So the common term used for that is MVP, for minimal viable product. So usually you'll start with what are the absolute key requirements I need, and break it down. And you deploy it over, if it's a 6-month period project, you will split up into different sprints. And then each sprint could be 2 weeks to 3 weeks. For each sprint, you'll define a very a small set of requirements. And corresponding to those requirements in those 3 weeks, you do the design iteratively, you do the development, you do the deployment. So that way, uh, you don't have to wait all the way till the end of 6 months to know what the product looks like. You can incrementally see it building it as well. And if there are any challenges in it or any dependencies or any issues, uh, you identify them sooner. So it is one of the most common method. So as a project manager, you would need to understand agile methodology, and there are different variations of it. There's Scrum, and usually there'll be a Scrum master, so a project manager who's delivering projects using agile methodology or using Scrum methodology specifically would have a Scrum master. And what it means is there's usually a Scrum call every day. You get together at a fixed time. All the team members, your developers, your testers, they come together and they'll share their status as to what's happening. So on a daily, day-to-day basis, you know what is happening. And usually a project manager will have a project plan in which it will have a list of all the tasks and who's working on what and when it needs to be delivered. So that's how a project manager is able to figure out what the plan is. Some of the common tools used to manage that project plan includes Microsoft Project, specifically more for waterfall methodology. And for Agile, there are tools called Jira, Jira, in which you can create what's called as stories. And that story, you are basically saying the use case, what needs to be done, a small part of the project that needs to be done. Corresponding to that use case, you have user stories, and then corresponding to that user stories, you'll have the design and the development. So all of it is tracked through Jira as well. So it is good if you're planning to pursue a career in project management, to have technical background, to have a good breadth of different technologies. Remember, in that IT landscape, what we discussed is IT career is very rewarding if you know what you're doing, specifically if you have a good breadth versus depth. So a good project manager would have good breadth of different technologies within IT. A good project manager would understand what is infrastructure, would have fairly good understanding of the different capabilities in the cloud. So if the engineer says, I'm having issues with creating a VPC in my AWS, the project manager is not clueless and is like, okay, I understand what it is, at least the basics of it. May not understand the details, but at least knows that what the issues and is able to communicate and follow up on those issues. So it's desirable to have that technology component, that knowledge for it, to have that intelligent conversation. And that's what a technical project manager does as well. Um, so if any questions related it, please feel free to post on the chat, on the WhatsApp as well. And anything more you would like to know about project management or any other roles, would be glad to answer that. Otherwise, we'll have Prashant now talk more about identity and access management. Uh, Briefly, to give you a high level overview why this is important. So last week we talked about network segmentation and using different route tables and configuring and creating different VPCs and VPC peering. And the reason why we did that was primarily for security, to make sure your network is segmented. We gave the example of, if you have valuables in your house, you will store them in a locker. You will store the locker in a locker room. You will have a lock to the door. You'll have a lock to your house. And if it's very important, then you'll have a watchman as well, and you'll have a perimeter. So there are multiple layers when it comes to securing your assets. In IT, it's the same case. In this case, the IT assets is data. So we want to protect the data in databases. So we want to make sure they are in a separate segment as well. Today, building onto it, we want to make sure another key component of security is authentication and authorization. Authentication is basically creating a username password. So you are who you claim you are using that username and that password. So someone has to create that username password store somewhere. So that way we make sure that only authorized users who've been granted permission can access those IT resources. So you can authenticate, and all that authentication information is stored in your identity and access management tool. AWS provides those capabilities as well. And then we want to make sure the authorization. Yes, you have a username password, but what are you authorized to do? Are you authorized to read or write, or are you authorized to just read only? What is your authorization to do? And one of the most common principles is to manage authorization is using role-based access control, or we call it as RBAC. And in that role-based access control, essentially what we are trying to do is we are making sure that instead of managing individual access to the resources, we assign individual to a role. The individual is an admin. The individual is a user. The individual is submitting data or so on. So depending on the role is given access, right? So as and when more users are added, they're added or removed from a group which is defined a role. Admin is a role, and then that role, that group, that container in which we add or remove users, that role is authorized to perform that operation. So Prashant will go into more details of it, but just want to let you know the big picture, why authentication and authorization, specifically using role-based access control, is very important. So with that, Prashant, if you can share with us more about identity access management, about a little bit more about S3. So I think it'll be a very informative session.
Thank you, Mukesh. Thank you for that wonderful insights, sharing wonderful insights about project management operations with the audience. I hope the audience must have liked it, and it must have been an experiential session for them as well for on career path guidance. So starting with today's AWS Cloud session. Hi everyone, I am Prashant, as already introduced by Mukesh. So I will be talking you through today on the below agenda that you see on the screen. So I hope my screen is visible to everyone. Can you do a +1 on the chat if that is visible to all? I see some of them. Yeah. Okay. I think Sri, you should be able to see my screen. Yeah, I can see a +1 from most of you people. So I think it is accessible. Okay, fine then. So the agenda for today is that I am going to give you a walkthrough on the important concepts of authorization and authentication on AWS Cloud. Like Mukesh has already talked you through what is authorization and what is authentication. So we have this service on AWS Cloud, which is known as Identity Access Management, under which the service is basically free of cost, and it basically helps you manage all of your users, roles, policies, authentication, authorization, what is going to access what resources and services on AWS Cloud. So that is a complete kind of a centralized place wherein your uh, access management is done. Right. And after we have covered the AWS IAM, which is Identity Access Management, we are going to cover up what is an S3 storage. We are going to look more in details about what is an S3 storage, what is an object storage, and what is the purpose behind using S3 storage, and what kind of business use cases can it sort out for the customers. And then we are going to do a small project wherein we are going to compile up or integrate all of these things that we have studied today into a small project wherein we will deploy a virtual machine and we'll try to access an S3 storage bucket through a secured and authentication manner, wherein we will create some policies and assign some rules to the virtual machine, and then see how are we able to do that through a secure or private channel or not. So I think I have already given you an introduction on AWS Identity Access Management that we are going to cover up. So I can come to the main slide, which is an identity access management user groups and roles. So a user is just like a user that you provision on any of the softwares that you use. It could be your Facebook, Instagram, or anything. Similarly, we have users on AWS who are the users of AWS console, AWS resources, AWS services. And what is a group? Uh, just literally, a group is is a collection of people, or in terms of cloud, you can say a group is a collection of AWS, multiple AWS users that have already been created on AWS console. And then what is a role? So just like in real life scenario, like role is some kind of like author, engineer, or inspector. So similarly, we have roles on cloud, which could be like reader, writer, or author, contributor, administrator, right? So we have different roles that are allocated to various resources to ensure that there is proper authorization and authentication mechanism in between when one resource is communicating to another resource which is there in a different service. So we'll look into each of these in details going forward. Yeah, so I was talking about what was a role. So just to give you a background about role, so what you see here is a badge, right? So a role is just a position or a function of somebody. So just like a police officer has a badge, and that badge makes him eligible to to get like it helps him get access quickly and immediately to many premises where general people will not have access, right? So role is just like that badge, or it could be like that ID card or badge that helps you get access to something. And in terms of if I talk on cloud, then it is just a like a badge that you give to a resource which can access other resources that are deployed across the cloud. So that is a role. And what kind of roles do we have on cloud? So we have like reader, writer, author, contributor, administrator. So if you give an administrator role to somebody, then he can control your AWS environment completely. He will get access to each and everything on cloud and he can do everything. But if you are giving just a reader role to a resource, he cannot, that particular resource cannot do any write operations. He cannot edit anything. The only thing that he can do is he can read or list out the things. Then what is a policy? Policy is one of the most important concepts on AWS when we talk about authentication, we talk about role-based access control, or while creating any user or group. So what is a policy? Policy is just like you can say that policy is a list of operations or list of access that a particular entity can be provided. For example, we just talked about reader and writer roles, right? So when we are giving read permissions and write permissions with respect to a specific resource on cloud, then that becomes a policy. And when we generate that policy and allocate that policy to a particular role, then that particular role becomes eligible to to get access to that particular resource as per the policy. So roles and policy are two different things that I will take a minute more to explain you. So just allow me a minute. So let me explain you by this example, by this diagram. So this is just a user, okay? And I have given this person a badge here, which becomes a role. So I give this person a badge, which becomes a role, and then I have a list which I have with me, and I list down all the permissions that I am willing to give to this role, which will help him access, which will help this person get access to important things. And those could be, for example, I am allowing him read access, I'm allowing him write access, I'm sharing the list access as well. So these are some of the accesses that I'm sharing with him, and then I can share some more, and I can say that I shared n number of accesses and I attached to this particular role, right? I have not attached this particular permissions to any person, but I have attached these particular permissions to a role. And when I give this badge of role to anybody, for example, right now I have given to this person, then automatically that person becomes eligible to act to act like any of these, like reader, writer, and perform all of these operations. Fine. And then this person will be able to access any resource wherein with the help of these permissions. But if he goes beyond these permissions, he will not be able to access. So if the next moment I try to take this role away from this person, so he will no longer be able to perform these operations, right? So this is the basic difference between, so this is the main functionality behind a role. And like as you see this question here, what is the difference between role and policy? So I think now you got to understand that role is different. The purpose of role is that it gets allocated to a person, and as soon as it gets allocated to a person, that person becomes eligible for all those policies that have been assigned, right? So, and what are policies? Policies are nothing but just a list of permissions that role will basically allow that particular person to do. Okay. So can you do a +1 if you are able to follow with me, if you are able to understand what I am trying to convey? If you got this concept completely, okay, good to know that. Thanks, Joshi. Okay, cool. So let me progress ahead now. Yeah, so I think now we have covered up the policy, and the today's one of the important areas that we will be using is command line interface. So what is a command line interface? You must have heard about graphical user interface. So graphical user interface is something that you operate using the graphics. So till now, all the exploration labs that we have done on AWS Cloud, we have done with the help of graphical user interface. So what is command line interface in that case? So command line interface is just another way wherein we use the command terminals, and we operate by using the commands rather than GUI. So here we don't use any graphics. We simply use some commands with the proper format, and those do the same things for us that the graphical user interface does for us. So the functionality of CLI is more flexible in comparison to GUI, because you have to navigate all the way, you have to perform multiple steps, go to a different page, go here and there, and then do your complete task, which in case if you do through CLI, you can do that in a single go with the single command, and it will also help you optimize time, reduce efforts, showcase results directly, because uh, here you are only putting that one command and you are giving all the inputs in that particular command, and as soon as you press enter after that command, your results are directly like in front of you. You don't have to wait longer in terms of GUI, and it is comparatively secure because you have encryption in transit enabled, so that takes care that your all the data that is traversing in the background is basically encrypted and secure. Yeah, we will cover policies, so we'll see on that as well, front as well. Yeah. So So let's look at what is a simple storage service. Conceptually, we will do a lab on this part as well. So you will be able to understand practically there. But let's understand firstly that what is a simple storage service conceptually. So simple storage service is known as S3 on AWS, and this is a kind of object storage. Now, what is an object? So we have heard of files, we have heard of block storage, but then what is something which is known as object-based storage? So object could be any random thing. Okay. So object could be your image, it could be a video, it could be a movie, or it could be a file as well. So in terms of object, anything random that has some data can be an object. Now, why do we need object storage? So in the age of data, in the age of information, we have a lot of data, and there are lots and lots more of data that is not structured, right? So if you we have couple of options available in IT in terms of technology to manage our data, like we have relational databases which follow the tabular format. Okay, then we have a file system which follows a tree structure, right? But then how do we ensure that we are also able to manage objects like these, which could be images, videos, or files that are randomly required? So for that, we have this new type of storage that is generally available on cloud, that is known as object storage. So most of you must be using Google Drive and then Microsoft OneDrive. So these drives are also considered to be object storage, because what do you store on there? You store your PDFs, you store your pictures, you store your important videos, but you don't store any kind of tabular format queries there, right? Or you don't store your Windows like the file system that you have on your PCs. You don't store that kind of files. So just by the help of you can get an idea what kind of Google Drive service offers is just like this service, simple storage service. But it's the only difference is that this is not an end user service. This is for cloud consumers. Yeah. So I think conceptually we had little to cover today, but then we will focus more on labs today, and that will give us a good insight about all of these practical concepts. So let's move to the lab section now. So before we move to the lab section, just do a +1 if you were able to understand, or if you want me to explain something again, I would be more than happy to do that. Okay, thanks, Saurabh. Okay, good to know that. Let me come to the console now. Yeah, so now I have logged in to the console. Let's first go to the service which I mentioned is IAM. So if you type here IAM, you will come to this option, and let's go to this option which is Identity Access Management. So this is one service that helps you manage all your users, all your that it provides you all the authorization and access management tools in a centralized place which you can use. So today we are going to focus on these important areas. So what is a user group, what is a user roles, policies, etc. So let's first take a look at user. I think I have a user created here. So before I move ahead with the lab, let me just do some sanitization activity and clean up that is not required, so that there is no confusion while when I'm trying to explain you. And do like feel free to let me know at any point of time if you feel my flow is going very fast, and if you're not able to catch up with me, you can you can anytime mention in the chat box, and I would be more than happy to readjust my flow. I hope that is fine with all of you. Then to start, before I start with the lab, let me just give you a background. Sorry. Yeah. So let's start with this. So this is my company. Let's understand first what we are going to do today. This is a company wherein it has got multiple departments within. Okay, so this could be a few departments that I'm showcasing you here. So it could be like the first one is a Linux team, right? And then second one could be a Windows team. Then third we can have networking team as well. And then fourth, we can have access management team. And as we also discussed on project management, so project management is also considered to be an important team. So let's create another team, which is project management team, right? And just to give you an idea, like for example, I have this company and I have these 5 core departments, and beyond these 5, I have more departments, but I don't have a very good count about them. So overall, I can tell you that, for example, I have 10,000 of employees. Okay, so which means that I have 10,000 users in my environment that I need to manage. Fine. And all of these services, all of these users are supposed to use AWS Cloud Platform. So this is my AWS Cloud Platform, and on AWS Cloud Platform, I have different services. Okay, so for example, let me just give you an idea by these 4 services. So first of all, I have these EC2 instances in my environment, which are known as virtual servers or virtual machine. Then I have another service which is known as S3 storage. Then I have another service which is known as VPC, which helps you create networks. And then this is some kind of other service. Now, as I already mentioned, that I have a Linux team and I have a Windows team. Okay, let me create one more service here, which is IAM. Right. So this is a background to help you understand how does corporates manage their access. So if I have a Linux team, then my Linux teams should be having access to my virtual servers so that they are able to connect to the virtual server. But my Linux team need not have access to the other services or IAM service, right? So what important here is, in terms of Windows also, Windows is an operating system. So operating system is connected to a virtual server, but the team does not have much to do with the network or other or IAM, right? So my Linux team and Windows team would require access to EC2 service. But then I have a networking team which will need access to network, but this team might also need access to EC2, but definitely this has nothing to do with IAM or S3 storage. Similarly, I have an access management team who takes care of all the 10,000 users who are in the environment to manage all of those access. It is the responsibility of this team to ensure that we are managing all the authorization and authentication processes well for all of these users. So this access management should have access to IAM service, but it does not require any access to other services, right? And similarly, we have project management, which can have access to other services, but no requirement for any of these services. So this is basically a flow that I wanted to explain you. Key, we should only give that access to that particular team that is required, not beyond that. That is known as least access privilege in cloud. So a user should only have that much privileges that is helping him to do his role in a complete manner. You need not give any extra access to that person. So that is the fundamental of access management anywhere, not on cloud, not in any IT company, but across the globe. It is the fundamental of IT to give least privilege access to a user so that he is not able to go beyond that and do some human error or do some any corrupted kind of activity or some illicit activity, right? So that is one of the important thing. Let's come to the console now. Just allow me a minute. Sorry about that. So let's create a user first. So let me create a user here and let's understand how do we create a user on AWS Cloud. So this is my username. I am creating a user and I'm giving myself a password, which I will give as a static password for now. And then I will come to the next option. Now it is asking me 2-3 different things to ask me to a user group, copy permissions from existing user or attach existing policies. So I can come to this attach existing policies directly and I can type here directly what kind of policy that I wish to attach to this user. So there is a policy which says IAM full access. So if I select this access, check in this button here, this is going to give me complete access of IAM to the user Prashant. So now let's come to the next tag and it is here in tag you can use this is a very good functionality how you can use this. So I will put a tag here team and I will put the value as access management, which means Prashant is a member of access management team. Now I will do a review. I will create this user. So successfully I have now created this user. I can download this CSV file and if I open this CSV file I will get this console link through which I can access this particular user. So I will copy this link, go to another window and the credentials that I have created with the help of those credentials, I will try to log in. So the password that I had generated there was this. I will try to log in here. So successfully, now I have logged in, but I have come to the Tokyo region. So instead of Tokyo, I will go to the North Virginia because I was in North Virginia region before. So now I'm in the North Virginia region. Now understand that what kind of access have I given to user Prashant. Prashant is an is from access management team. He does not need access to EC2, S3 or any of the other 200 services on AWS cloud. What he needs access is just IAM. So now if I will open up any other service, it will show some kind of error to me. Like what you see here is it's showing API error, because I don't have access to this service. It will not show any details to me. Similarly, if I will go to some different service, let's come to an S3 service, and if I will try to open S3, then again, yeah, it does not give me any of these options. You see, it is grayed out. I cannot click anywhere to create a storage bucket because I just don't have access to that. What I have access to is only IAM. If I will go to IAM, I can do any operation here. Yeah, so I have access to complete IAM. I can do anything here. So now I will create another user again. And let me add Mukesh. I will grant him a password again. I will uncheck this. Permission. Yeah. So now I have this option to copy permissions from existing user. So this is also something that I can do, but I don't need this. I will go attach existing policies directly and I can now look for EC2. So Amazon EC2 full access. So I will grant full access to Mukesh as I am considering him as a team member of Linux. Because he's from Linux, he does not need access to IAM. He needs access to servers. He needs access to Linux servers. So that is why I gave him the full access of EC2. So now I will create this user. And now successfully Mukesh is also one of the users on AWS Cloud. So till now what I showed you was that I created an individual user and then I assigned them individual policies, right? But what if right now I only had 2 users, and what if I have more than 20 users in every team? So as per the diagram, let's consider my Linux team has around 20 users, Windows team has around 40 users, and then again my networking team has around 25 users, and similarly I have more than 100 people across these 5 departments. So it would be a very hectic task for me to manage to create users one by one and then give permissions one by one, right? So because that is going to make my work more tedious. So in that case, what I will do is I will come to user. Let me delete this first. So now I will come to user group, and rather what I can do is I can simply create these many groups, these 5 that you see. So let me create any one out of these, which could be let's say Linux, right? And then I can add Mukesh to Linux, and then what I can do is I can select the policy of EC2 again. I can create this group. So successfully now I have created this Linux group under which Mukesh is present. So Mukesh has access to EC2 full access, but now I can remove this. I will remove this access for now. And now you will understand why I am removing this. So why I removed this from Mukesh? Mukesh I had granted. Okay, let me do a refresh. Yeah, so I have removed EC2 Linux access from Mukesh, but now when I created a new user group, I assigned that permission to Linux, that this particular group will have all the access to EC2. Then in that case, any of the users present in that group need not have that access individually. They can have no access, but still if they are present in this group and all the access this particular group will have, they will automatically get that. So it is just like if you're present in a team, you will have access to all of that. So now Mukesh will have access to all of the EC2 things. He can perform any operation on EC2 that he wants to do. So this is how you can basically use user groups and roles. So far, so good. Can you do, are you all feeling okay? Are you able to understand all of that? Or you want me to repeat any particular thing? You can please mention that in the chat box. Any particular item that you could not understand? Okay. No, you cannot use this IAM service to create multiple users in a one go with the help of any file or something like that. Because here you don't get that feasibility. But generally, if you have an Active Directory server in your environment, then with there is another service in AWS that is known as Directory Service. By integrating both of these services, you can integrate all of your users Even if there are more than 10,000 of users, you can integrate them into AWS Cloud, and they will be directly able to access AWS Cloud through that directory service. But there is no such thing that you upload all the users in a file and automatically they will be created. So I think then, yeah, somebody has asked to explain group again. So let me just give you an example again here. So group is just a collection of users. So let's say this is a group, and here this group is for Linux team. Okay, then in my Linux team I have more than 10 people. So these are those 10 people. So just consider, okay, so this is a group of 10 people. I will I create a policy and then attach to all of these users individually? That is going to become a hectic task for me. I will have to do 10 times. But then the optimized approach would be to create a group and assign a policy to this particular group rather than assigning to your individual users, which will reduce your work, which will optimize your work 10 times, right? So once I assign all the access that my Linux teams, each and every member will require to the group only, then automatically all of these users will have access to that particular service, right? So this is group. So now let's move ahead and understand a role. So before we understand a role, let's understand a policy, and let's understand how to create a policy. Let me delete a few policies in that case. Yeah, let's create a policy now and just understand how you can create a policy. So if you want to create a policy, there are four basically components that you have to go through. No, so RDBMS is different. So don't compare it with that. You will slowly and gradually understand this. So let's create a policy for S3. So I will choose S3 here. So it gives me the list of all of the services. So I will choose S3 here. And then it is asking me to choose the actions that I want to perform on S3 service, S3 storage. So then in that case, I just want to perform some read operations, and then I also want to perform some write operations and some listing operations. I don't need any tagging or permissions management. So if you'll click on list, then list has 10 different list actions. So even if you want to further granularize, you can do that, but that is not required at the moment. And then read has 52 read accesses. So these are some of the read accesses. And then we are selecting write as well. So these are some of the write accesses that we are going to select for today. And then these are the resources. We will select all resources for now. And then we will go ahead. No need to create a tag. Yeah, we will name this policy as read write access to S3. Put the same in the description box and create this policy. So now we have created a policy. We can explore this policy. So it gives us this kind of JSON. So if you look carefully at this JSON, it defines all the operations that you can do. So these are some of the operations: S3 delete bucket. You can even delete a bucket. You can list a bucket. You can get means you can look into what kind of objects are there into the buckets and all that. List jobs, get object, describe job. So you have created a policy to do all of these operations. Now what we will do, we will create a role and we will assign that particular policy to that role. Now if you remember, that role is just a badge that if you allocate to anybody, he will get access to all of those items that are mentioned. So we will create a role. Now we will create a role for EC2 service because we want to give EC2 service access to S3. So we will select this particular policy that we have created right now, which will give EC2 the access to read and write to S3. So now my role name would be EC2 to S3. I will create a role. So successfully my role has now been created. Yeah. So far we have covered up user, groups, roles and policies. So now that you see that we have this role created, which is EC2 to S3. Now in our project that we have for today, we will use this particular role that is already connected to a policy in the background, which is read write access to S3, which ensures that whoever gets this badge assigned will be able to read and write to S3 bucket. Okay. So before we project on the lab, I think we can take a short break, 5 minutes break, and then we will be able to resume back with our project because then we will have to focus again for a while on the project. So meanwhile, I will request you all to take a break as well, and then we'll start. So hi everyone, I hope everyone is back, and I see a very good question on the chat which Kamal has asked, and I was about to come there because there is a difference between a role and a group, although both seems like exactly the same thing, but there is a difference. Let me share my screen meanwhile. So Kamal, just to give you that answer, uh, you might have to wait a couple of more minutes, and then you will automatically get that answer. So now as we are supposed to start with our project, and I think our project will automatically answer that question for you. And if not, we'll still answer that ourselves again. Yeah. So before I start with the project, let me build up a story for you wherein, let me open the paint. Yeah. So the story would be that I have my developer community, which is this. So I have a developer team and which basically uses a virtual server on AWS Cloud. Okay, so this is my virtual server, which is an EC2 instance for development purpose. So this developer community, all the developer users use this EC2 instance for development. Now, as per my scenario, my requirement, all the developers are supposed to update their code end of the day to a storage location, and that storage location should be safe enough. So for example, now I have this something which looks like a bucket. So this I will call it as an S3 storage bucket. So as soon as my developers complete their code, it is their responsibility to also put that code on S3 storage bucket and then go home. Now, they don't have any access on S3 storage. What they need to do is they directly need to save all of their content from EC2 instance itself to S3 storage. So we have to develop this short use case on cloud now, and let's see how role is getting used, how policies are getting used, how users and groups are getting used. So let's see it live now. I will go to the home console. So as you see that I have an EC2 instance, right? So first I will need to deploy an EC2 instance. I will go to the instance and then I will see there is an option of launching instance. So first of all, I will launch an instance which I will call as my dev instance, dev server, which is my development server, right? I will choose the Amazon Linux for now because this will give me Amazon command line interface by default. Otherwise, I will have to go and install manually. So I don't want to waste any efforts there. So I will use Amazon Linux 2 for now. Instance type would remain the same. We can create a new key pair today, which will be 6 November. I have my key pair now. I will keep the other settings as default and then I will launch this instance. So meanwhile, this instance is getting launched and let me open up this notepad. So first of all, I have a developer, 10 developers, then who are using my developer instance. And then how do they store the codes to S3 storage? Now this is the question. Now why this is a question? Because my EC2 service is different and my S3 storage service is different. I will open up a different tab and I will take you to the S3 service. If you will type S3, you will see that S3 is a completely different service And within S3, we have to create storage buckets, and then you can store your objects within the bucket. So just to give you a glance through S3, let me create a test bucket here. So I will create a test bucket here, which I will call as my dev code bucket sequence 001 version 001. So this is my test bucket name, which needs to be global across. So if you give a very simple name, it won't take it because it needs to be globally unique. For now, I will choose this option because this will give me more flexibility. I will let me disable the block all public for access for now, just to give you a good understanding. Otherwise, that is not recommended for at least the developers scenarios. And then I have this very first bucket created here. Now when I go inside the bucket, I can upload my objects, which could be a video, it could be an image or any file. So let me upload a kind of a test file. I have created this index.html file, which is just a short file. I will go to the permissions, and here I will grant all public access instead of private. Why I'm doing this is, shortly I will show you why I'm doing this, because I want to show you the benefit behind using S3 bucket. Now I have a content uploaded on this S3 bucket. Now how can my S3 bucket help me? So see, I have this bucket. Let me look at the bucket properties. So it offers you versioning. So when you are using versioning, which means you developed a code and then tomorrow you developed another version of it. So then this allows you to keep version of your objects that you're placing on S3 bucket. And then if you're updating the 10th version of your code, that is how it will be able to manage the versions. So it will not delete anything. Even if you're deleting, that will be kind of maintained in a separate place, and then you can still retrieve it later on. And then we have something known as down the line, which is static website hosting. And this is one of the most important feature that S3 provides. So I will go edit and I will enable the static website hosting. I will give my file name. Here you need to give your file name, whatever it is. So my file name is index.html. I will save these changes. And as soon as I save these changes, I will again go down, and here it gives me a URL. Now if I click on this URL is going to open up my website for me. So right now it is giving me a 403 error. Let's see why it is giving me this error. Let's try to troubleshoot. So under permissions, block off. Yeah, that is okay. Objects. Yeah, so I think this is my file. I need to check what are the permissions. So I have not yet given complete everyone public access. I need to understand that. I need to submit again. Yeah, so it's opening up. Let me try again from the bucket level. Just a minute. Properties, intelligent. Everything looks fine. Then let me check the permissions here. It can be public. Edit. Yeah, save changes. Confirm. Edit. Yeah. So right now, this access is not checked out here. So I should check this access here, wherein only the website will be accessible if this list access are checked. So now I will update these changes, and then I will try to open the website again. Okay, there seem to be some other issue. Let me check again. Log public and on this bucket. Okay, no problem. So we'll skip this for now. We'll check from the object level. From the object level, we are able to open up the static website. So let me see if that static website is available on our incognito page as well, which means the static website is available. I will put this link on the chat as well. So I think you can also try at your end if you're able to see my static website at your end. So with that, we shall now proceed ahead. Now, meanwhile, I think our instance would already have been deployed now. Yeah. So are you all able to access the link at your end? You can do a +1 if you're able to access this website at your end. Okay. Anybody else also facing? Okay, no worries. We'll check that later. So for now, let us progress ahead on our project. So we have completed first step, which is to deploy a web server. We have a development server. We have deployed a development server. Now what we need to do this is we will log into this development server. This is the public IP. We will log into the development server. We'll put the IP here. We will use the private key 6 November that we created today. And we will log in using the EC2 user. Yeah. Now we have successfully logged into the developer instance, and considering that I am also a developer, I am assuming myself as a developer. So I have access to this EC2 instance. And then there is, as I talked about, AWS command line interface. So we will by default get a command line interface with this Amazon Linux version. So how we can check this is AWS -- version. So like this, it will tell us that AWS CLI is already installed. Okay, so we have AWS CLI already installed. We'll take a look at that later. So for now, I would request all of you to focus here so that you don't miss upon this important project. So now we have AWS CLI installed, but now I can try a couple of commands from here. EC2. So as you see that we have our CLI installed, and we can try a couple of commands, and we will try to find out some good commands from Google for AWS CLI creation of listing of S3 buckets. So this is one command that we will use, but right now it won't show anything because right now we have not assigned the role to the is to our this machine. So right now you see that it is saying unable to locate or anything like that, right? So why it is showing like that? Because we have created a role, but we have not yet assigned that role to this particular developer server. How to assign that role? Come to the actions, and then under the security thing, you will see that modify IAM role. Now, if I'll click on modify IAM role, and if I click that down, this drop down, I will see my role that has not been assigned yet. Now I will select this role. I will update IAM role. Now that role has been basically mapped to this particular server. Now if I will run the same command, I should get a different results. You see, now as soon as I assigned that badge to my machine, now it was able to identify that I have two buckets. So under buckets, it is showing me two buckets, which is my dev code bucket and then my other Prashant CUR report. I have two buckets. As soon as I assigned the role to my machine, it worked out for me. Now somebody had asked this question, what is the difference between a group and a role? So this is the difference, that role is not assigned to any person, any user or any group. Role is assigned to a resource on cloud. So this is one of the basic fundamental difference between a role-based access control and a user or a group-based. So role is always assigned to a particular service-based resource that will be able to access any other service-based resource across the AWS cloud. So I hope now the difference between role and group is clear to all of you. Now you see that my role. So if I come to this page and I just take you back to a little while where we created a policy, I think, and in that policy what we gave was read, list and write permissions on S3 service, S3 storage service. So I should be able to read, I should be able to write, and I should be able to list as well on S3 storage. So this is my policy. Now my EC2 instance has already started to list. I need to check on the read and write thing. So to check the right thing, I will try to create a bucket, a new bucket. So let's come here. AWS S3 API -hub. Yeah, let me rather pull a command from here only. Just bucket. Yeah, so I will use create bucket. PI create bucket, and then there should be a name parameter as well, bucket. And then I will try to give any random name, which could be test AWS sequence 001 and 001. Yeah, so it successfully created a bucket for me. So now what I need to do is go to the console and check if that bucket has been created or not. I will go to the S3. I will go to the bucket section. We'll do a refresh. Yeah, so successfully I have got my another bucket created. And how did I create that bucket? I did not come to the S3 console manually, and I just, with the help of this particular instance virtual server, I created a bucket, and I can now transfer any object, any code to this particular bucket from here as well. So there will be a couple of options, like you can do some kind of copy or like move options that you can try. Let me, yeah, or copy object. So down the below, we should be able to see some of the, yeah, so even you can choose your region. Let us create another bucket in another region with the help of this particular command. We might need to change the bucket name, as that should be globally unique. So I will create a random name here. Okay, no worries. Let me select another region. Let me change the bucket name. Yeah, so there was some issue with this flag. So no worry, it has now created another bucket, and I will try to copy any object with the help of copy command. So any doubt so far from anyone? Or were you able to understand all of that? Okay. Yeah, so we also have S3 ls command, and then we also have S3 AWS S3 CP. I will have to create a touch file here, touch file 1. Now I have a file available which I will try to copy. S3, I will give a path. I can find that path from the console itself. So if I come here, then okay, no worries. I will have to mention my bucket name. Yeah, so it successfully copied my file here. I will have to refresh the page. Loaded file 1 to S3 file 1. Yeah, so my file 1 has successfully come to this particular bucket that we created. So you can consider this file as a code, just like a developer developed a code file and then it transferred this file successfully to the S3 bucket. And then we can still, like, this file is preserved in this particular S3 storage, and you can refer to this particular code file anytime that you want. So that was the basic, that was one of the aim that we wanted to showcase you through this particular project. So this was a short project that we wanted to showcase you, so that you were able to understand about all of these users, groups, roles, and policies. So in this project, we particularly used roles and policies, and then we saw how we connected a role, how we allocated a badge of role to a particular EC2 instance. And when we had not mapped that role to an EC2 instance, it was not able to access the S3 storage. And as soon as we mapped that access to EC2 instance, that role to EC2 instance, it immediately started accessing the S3. And we had allocated three policies: list policy, read policy, and write policy. So out of them, we are able to list as well, we are able to read as well, and we are able to write as well. So we successfully copied a file from home location to destination location, which means that we are able to write as well. So this was the main purpose of the lab today that we showcased. And then on the similar baselines, we have this we have created an assignment for you as well, which will be better for you if you try this at your home. So you have to just try the same set of steps that we did today, like launching a static website using S3 storage, and then deploy the same set of same project that we did today, like deploy a VM and assign it a role, create a policy at your end, and then map it with an EC2 instance and try to do some copy or creation of buckets from your end. I have also attached some of the reference links here that you will be able to find all the instructions and steps here to basically help yourself out on these areas. So far so good. Were all of you able to understand that project well? Can you all do a +1 who were able to understand? And if there is someone who could not understand any particular flow or any particular area, you can let me know. I can take you through again through that area. Okay. I think everybody is good. Then in that case, let me just showcase you the next session's agenda, and then we'll move to the Q&A session. So the agenda for next session is we are going to focus on databases on AWS Cloud. And initially under the career guidance, we will talk you through about on the similar backgrounds on business analysis and data analysis role, and how these roles are going to be cutting edge in our market. And as you all know, that data is the new oil. So like all the roles in our coming generation are going to be data-based roles, and already data scientists and data professionals are earning a huge like they are grabbing the market like anything. So it will be a good session to understand how database is impacting careers, and as well as what kind of databases are available on AWS Cloud that you can explore through. So now it'd be good if we can have questions from you. Please feel free to drop any questions that you may want to ask. Otherwise, meanwhile, I will also paste the feedback link in the chat box. So I will request all of you to take this valuable feedback, submit your valuable feedback so that we are able to improve on our sessions going forward. And I can also give you a walkthrough. So this is the feedback form. So based upon your experience so far on today's session, you can rate the session. And if you feel it was beneficial, it was good for you, you can rate it accordingly. And if you feel there can be some improvements, you can rate it as per your convenience. Then here is the section which you like the most. If you like the content covered, then you can check. If you like the labs or the presentation or any specific item from today's session, you can mention it here. And if you think that the speed was reasonable, you can mention it yes. Otherwise, if you feel I was too fast or people were struggling to catch up with me, you can mention no. And we will be definitely more appreciating your feedback if you give us a genuine feedback. If it is negative, no worries. That will help us improve on our ground, on our parameters. And do list out if you have grabbed any important learning from today's session here. That is also going to give us a good parameter to go forward. And yeah, do mention your suggestions. What is additional things that we can add for you and how we can further improve if you have any suggestions. And if you find that the mind relaxing breaks are helpful for you, you can even mention yes. Or if you think that are not much helpful, or you feel that that is something you truly require or not require, you can also accordingly put a yes or no here. And if you have any additional comments for us, you can put it in the section. And would be great if you could do the last one as well, wherein what would be your feedback if you would want to invite your friend for the upcoming sessions or not. Okay, so we have a question from Kamal, which says roles can be assigned to resources, but groups cannot be. It is the only difference. Yeah, so roles can only be assigned to resources. Groups will only have users within. So group means that it will have a user, and user will be a physical person. And role will be assigned to a resource, and resource is not going to be a person. It is going to be a virtual server or a Lambda function or any resource on AWS cloud. So that is the difference. Yeah, so Rico, we can definitely cover up the policy and S3 part again. I will try and investigate why I was not able to launch the static website, and will resolve that. And more hopefully we should have our static website up in the next session. So I think we are good for now. In that case, I think thank you all for joining this
Thanks,
session
Prashant.
today.
What we'll do is, Prashant, let's have another mind relaxation technique. Rocky can help us relax our mind to make sure we retain and absorb it. So, Rocky, if you want to share with us another technique, a mind relaxation technique, that'll be great.
Good evening once again. Let's observe the image that's been shared on the screen. The calm face, tranquilness, just a very blissful expression on that face. This is who we truly are. And the moment we deviate from this state of relaxation, the state of inner bliss, of contentment, that's when the disturbances and the turmoils begin. And we no longer look like the image that is shared on the screen. We lose our original personality. Stress at work, family disputes, conflicts, behavioral patterns of other people we interact with that disturb us, career challenges, job loss, ambitions, many things that take us away from this state. Is it worth it? So let's exercise self-mastery in very simple terms. My relaxed state of mind is going to serve me. The energy, the vibrations, the aura of a relaxed state serves everybody around me. It is a state to be in. Let's bring our day in front of us from morning until now. Let's go into some self-inspection. Did I look like this image throughout the day? Did I enjoy my state? Did others perceive the same image? Or was I a victim of my mind and fluctuations and disturbances? If my inner state is not stable, it's not enjoyable, my words and actions will also disturb others. My work will not be efficient. My relations will not be ideal. Let me just keep looking at this image, this innocence on the face, this very subtle smile of contentment, a state of inner enjoyment, regardless of anything that's happening outside. That's self-mastery. I have a place in this world. The world doesn't shape me. I change the world and shape the world based on the state of mind. This is self-mastery. Nothing matters more than this. What matters is I navigate through this journey of life in this world of turmoil, disturbances, of duality, happiness, sorrow, conflicts, harmony. I navigate through this jungle peacefully, amicably, with enjoyment. I am blissful. I am relaxed. I don't need to practice relaxation. My original state is relaxed. The energy field, the feelings that I experience in this state, and the energy of every thought and feeling that emanates out of this state benefits all. It shapes the world. It changes unfavorable circumstances into favorable, not externally, but internally. I know how to deal with the challenge of the unfavorable circumstance, the challenge that it has come to present, to take me into a disturbance, a turmoil state. That challenge I face with my serene, tranquil, calm, relaxed state. It's very easy to do it. If I keep practicing, it becomes my habit. It's easy because it's my original natural state. I resonate with it easily. I don't need anyone else's help to feel this state. It's not dependent on anyone or anything. I can experience it because I want to. I'm a master of my own state. Let's purge, delete everything else that we accumulated throughout the day. All the disturbances, all the fluctuations, the anxiety, anything. Let's delete and come back to our original state. Relaxed. Every time there's a moment of turmoil or disturbance, let me think of these minutes of brief meditation. Let me bring this image in front of me. Let me take the energy from this image and let me just become this and navigate through this journey of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, everyone.